Welcome to the January 10th edition of the PFF Forecast, recording live from an airport somewhere in the United States. Can't tell you where. Great show. Great show. A lot happening today. We just found out that Nick Saban is retiring. We'll break down what he and Bill Belichick are going to do next. We also have wild card round. It is the anniversary of Judah almost hitting 2 enormous SGPs in the same weekend. Ended up hitting 1. Talk about that. It was on Monday night. Be great topic of conversation. A lot of weather, some injuries to talk about. It's going to be a great podcast. Let's rock. I don't really know where to even start here. We've tried to keep Brad sane here. It's been a hell of a day for a lot of fan bases out there. The Bears are one of them. The Titans, as we predicted boldly last episode, got rid of Mike Vrabel, turned around and immediately said, let's try and hire poor man's Mike Vrabel, and interviewed Dan Quinn. So there's that. And we have a slate of 6 really interesting games to chat through today. Let's start, Brad. Just want to give you a few seconds to kind of summarize the moves that you think that have happened right now and what you think of them.
Yeah. I mean, the funniest thing is we might get in a single offseason Mike Vrabel, a 4-time straight winning season, division winner in the AFC South, number 1 seed in the AFC, made a championship game. He got fired. Pete Carroll, one of the greatest coaches in the history of football, both college and pro, he was pushed out. Bill Belichick might get fired as well. But the Flus is still loose, baby. I mean, number 1 overall pick. Why not let a 56-year-old defensive coordinator, who single-handedly lost 3 games with in-game decision-making, and his first hire at OC was incompetent. Why not let him do it again? Like, what? Why would you not want to do that? And then anyway, so that's the biggest takeaway there. Not super shocked. We predicted some of these. You called Pete Carroll. I put Mike Vrabel as a trade candidate in an article like 4 months ago. That had been bubbling for a while. Yeah, I mean, I will say this. Like, I think the NFL's changed a little bit where I think we are going to see things skew offense. I think we are going to see things skew towards we're not going to let you just not know how to game manage anymore. And, like, we are going to be critical of those things. The Monday to Saturday coach, and I think Pete Carroll is and a lot of these guys are elite at it. If they're not good on Sundays, it's going to be hard to keep these jobs for as long as they have. So, legends, a lot of those guys are, but that's just the direction of the league.
It's interesting. I was going to ask if you guys think there is any sort of candidate or set of candidates out there that have precipitated this. Like, do people just feel that strongly about Harbaugh? Is it Ben Johnson? Is it Dan Quinn? Like, are there people? Because I look at those, the top of that class. It's like, yeah, there's some good options, but are you really that confident in either one of them to say, yeah, I'm going to get rid of a guy that's proven to run a really good organization, build a great culture? I think both of those guys have done that. To your point, the Sunday decision-making may be a little bit on the other side of that. But, like, is your view that there's a particular candidate or candidates in mind here, or is this just coincidence?
I think Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald are probably, I know it's just 2 names. There's more than 2 openings, but I think those guys are viewed as like tier 1 candidates, and there are a handful of others. Jim Harbaugh, of course, in that conversation as well. Obviously, he kind of falls in the Monday to Saturday bucket too, but not quite as young as some of the other guys. Not quite as old, sorry, as Belichick, for example. But yeah, I think it's also just to go to Tennessee point, like, we are in the era now, too, where I think these buildings want there to be multiple people delegating a million different responsibilities because it's simply too much to ask one person to do. And I don't think some coaches are open to that. And I just think they say, hey, no, we want a GM that handles personnel, a coach that does this, yada, yada, yada. And that's going to ruffle some feathers. But the new coaches, I think, are more open to the idea.
Which owner has the best chance to get Belichick and Saban to team up? That's what we need.
I'll go Atlanta. I'll go Atlanta Falcons and Arthur Blank. They're going to get Bill Belichick head coach, Nick Saban D coordinator. Just get the boys back together, just ripping it through Atlanta. It's going to be amazing.
I mean, Saban, familiar with winning in that stadium, has won more than any of the Falcons teams have. It would be so great. Can you imagine? Oh, those press conferences would be delightful. And they'd never go for a fourth down ever. Never. Just they'd make the nerds so mad. It's perfect because all the nerds are so frustrated by Arthur Smith, former Falcons coach. And then you bring in Belichick and Saban, and they can just be more pissed off. That'd be great. All right, let's get into it. We do have a wild card round to talk about. We'll save the 60 minutes on the woke media sacking Aaron Rodgers for the end of the show because we know that's why everyone shows up. And everyone cares very deeply about that. So let's start. Weather playing an impact in this slate, a couple of different spots, despite there being like 3 dome games. Injuries as well. Brad, why don't you take us through that?
Yep. So the injury breakdown here, we'll go game by game. First for the Texans-Browns. The Texans are really, really banged up. Noah Brown was not at practice. The receiver, Robert Woods, was limited. And then the defense, in particular, the defensive line is a little scary. You have all these guys did not practice as of Tuesday. Wednesday hasn't come out yet for the Texans that I can see. But Sheldon Rankins, Jonathan Grenard, Malik Collins, and Will Anderson. That is their starting 4 defensive linemen. And frankly, all 4 good football players. None of those guys practiced on Tuesday. So that's going to be interesting. Amari Cooper was out with a heel, and rookie Cedric Tillman was out with a concussion. Otherwise, the Browns are fairly healthy. Obviously, they've had a lot of injuries throughout the year, but fairly healthy besides those. And Kareem Hunt was limited, but they should be fine there. Lions-Rams game. The Rams, in a shocking twist, they were smart. They didn't play any of their guys, and they might be the healthiest team going into the playoffs, and they still got the 6th seed. Sometimes it's not that hard to do this. The Lions have Khalif Raymond, who's probably not going to play, said considered unlikely to play. And Sam Laporta, the messaging the whole week has been, we'll see. Hasn't practiced all week, said he's day-to-day, but they're like, we don't even know yet if he could be. If he does play, he's not going to be close to healthy. The Lions gained nothing by doing that. For the Miami game, they are the most injured team in the league going into the playoffs by a country mile. On top of all the guys we already know that are out, Andrew Van Ginkel now on IR, so down their top 3 edge rushers. Jerome Baker, their number 1 off-ball linebacker, is on IR. Actually, their 4th edge rusher, or one of them, a deeper guy, Cameron Good, also placed on IR. So it's going to be like Melvin Ingram, Emmanuel Ogbah, not the worst 4th and 5th edge rusher in the world. But anyway, Deshaun Elliott, the safety, who's been playing good ball this year, did not practice. Xavier Howard, the corner, is considered doubtful. And then you have both running backs were limited, Achane and Mostert, and then both receivers, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, were limited. The big one of those 4 is, of course, Jalen Waddle with the high ankle. I think he plays. I'm not like saying he's injury prone or whatever. He's left the field in the middle of, I think, all 17 games this year to take some plays off because of various, nicks and bruises. I think we'll get the same in this game, unfortunately. We'll go to Philly versus Tampa. Judah was talking pre-show. It is kind of fascinating how little we've heard about Jalen Hurts with the finger. We all saw it on TV. It was pretty gnarly. It's not broken, so I think it was just dislocated. They'll pop it back into place, tape it to the one next to it, but it is on his throwing hand, not ideal. And then A.J. Brown goes down the knee injury, did not look good at all, and he's had a history of knee issues, but the report from Mike Garofalo, not believed to be serious, so maybe he's okay. The big one here that I think not enough people are talking about, rookie Sidney Brown at safety, out for the year, torn ACL. He had a pick 6 for like 100 yards a couple weeks ago. And Reed Blankenship, who's their other kind of deep safety, safety net on the back end of his defense, did not return in the game on Sunday because of a groin injury. We'll see his status. So, Devontae questionable, Darius Slay coming off the IR stint, or I don't know if he went on IR, but coming off an extended absence, also worth monitoring. Bucks are pretty healthy, unless I'm missing anyone. Last one, the Steelers-Bills game. Najee Harris did not practice on Wednesday. But otherwise, for the Bills, the big one is Gabe Davis. I think he's trending towards not playing, if I had to guess. And that, I think, is all I got. Weather report, final thing here. Pittsburgh-Buffalo is the big one. Cold, windy, wind at around 15 mile an hour sustained, gusts up to 30 miles an hour. That is going to impact the passing game. And then Miami, Kansas City. more about temperature than wind. There are light winds, 10 to 15 miles an hour. We do talk a lot about how like temperature matters way less and probably people account for it too much. It's going to be like 0 degrees with a real feel of negative temperatures. And the Miami Dolphins, are from Miami. It's going to be loud. It's going to impact, I think, their offense. No question about it. Philadelphia, Tampa Bay is minimal, some rain, but I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, so I'm excited about this. Judah, you naturally are always inclined to fade the aggressive weather narratives. You also are the person at the tip of the sphere on the Miami Dolphins, have been for a while. Are you remaining resilient with the Dolphins?
I don't think so. I mean, I do. As much as I love the Dolphins, the injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball, really have me concerned. I do think there's an interesting kind of game script, and maybe this is an SGP that I actually hadn't planned on sharing, but works here, of just like the Dolphins really rely on the ground game. I think that's kind of the biggest matchup advantage of either side in this game, which is a Miami offense that can really run the ball effectively and a Kansas City defense, which cannot stop the run defense, which can't stop a nosebleed. I think if Miami kind of jumps out to a positive game script, continues to lean on their ground game, that can work. And this is also just like not the Patrick Mahomes chief offenses of past years where like, sure, that works, but Mahomes is going to score, tick for tat, and you're kind of just relying on a bunch of variance. Like he's going to, I mean, obviously everything can change, but if things have been going as they have for Kansas City, they're going to have a bunch of 3 and outs. And I think Miami can actually reasonably kind of rely on their ground game and win that way. But that's never the bullish thesis on the Dolphins. If it's not, if it's not Tua getting rid of the ball quickly to Hill and Waddle, that's not the bullish Dolphins thesis I've been accustomed to.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. One of the things that's surprising to me, and I actually agree with you in terms of the way that the Dolphins keep this close. And do we think that Mostert is going to play? Like my assumption is Achane is going to play, just getting rest. Mostert has not played for the past couple of weeks. Do we think he's back? Excuse me. Do we think he's back, Brad?
Yeah, I think he'll be fine.
Okay. Because to me, that's the way, right? And if you want to take a contrarian view on this game, some kind of Mostert, Achane both going over would be where my head goes. Like I think there's a lot of reason to believe that it's going to be a struggle for them in the passing game. And I'm also interested in this total. It's 44. You can actually find 44.5 out there as well. And if you compare that, I just like thinking about the other games. Like, I know there's not a ton of wind. But Pittsburgh and Buffalo is 36.5. 44 in Tampa Bay, Philly, 40, like 44.5 feels like a decent number of points for an offense in Kansas City that has been really not great. And then when you look at the Dolphins, let's look at their last few games here. They have scored 14 at home against Buffalo, 19 against the Baltimore Ravens, and 22 against the Cowboys. Those are 3 real teams that they've played. The Chiefs are a very real team. Like they have not been particularly great. Oh, by the way, they also played Kansas City. They scored 14 points in that game as well. That was on a neutral site. Like I don't know. I mean, how do they get to 20 points in this game? I don't really see it, especially with how banged up they are. I mean, obviously the way they could get there, if Achane and Mostert explode, maybe Hill gets loose, but Hill got loose in that Kansas City game, and they only scored 14.
Yeah, I think I would really love this. This game opened at 47.5.
Yeah,
and like the weather bet it down to 44. And I like really want to fade that weather narrative, but also think this price is probably right. So I would have loved that, but kind of as you said, it does not take that much for the Dolphins to, just because of how explosive Hill and Waddle are. It's like you sustain 2 drives and then have one, massive explosive play. I think you can get there. But I do think it leads to much interesting narratives about the game.
I feel like for how cold it is and how bad Tua and the Dolphins have been on the road and in the cold, like I'm honestly surprised that it's this high. But I know that's like the obvious take. So, it'd be interesting to kind of dig into the contrarian view. Okay. You mentioned some SGPs. I need to open this up in the right way. So there were 2 games last year. I believe the first one was Vikings Giants. And had it not been for some Daniel Jones kneel downs, Judah would have hit, I want to say it was like, was it 200 to 1 or something like that?
180 to 1.
Yeah, a 180 to 1 SGP. I mean, so we're heartbroken. Nails that game, absolutely nails it. We roll into Monday night, Cowboys and Bucks, the swan song for Tom Brady. And Dak Prescott redeems the NFC East there for Judah. Hits, was that 170, 175, something like that. SGP.
340.
Oh, it's 340. That's right. The other one was way better. 340 to 1. So absolutely incredible. You had a few variations of that we had talked about, both like combinations of quarterback and spread. You really opened it up on that one, though. And I think in the playoffs is where you really started to push the pedal to the metal in terms of looking for these really big odds correlations. So with that, let's get into it. The wild card SGPs.
Yeah, no pressure to kind of go back to back wild card weeks. Of course not. Yeah, I think there's going to be a bunch of spots that I like here, and kind of we'll get closer as the game gets closer. We'll probably dive a little deeper into kind of what you're saying about really building out an SGP. So I'd stay tuned for that article on PFF.com. But now we'll kind of talk about some of just the macro angles I'm looking at. We'll start with Steelers and Bills, and this is going to be a fade the weather type of situation. Granted, if we do get possible sustained winds of 30 miles per hour, I'm not going to want to be betting on this, but right now I'm seeing 15s with gusts to 30, which is the wheelhouse for where I want to fade weather, because I think the deep passing only starts to really be influenced. We're getting 20 mile per hour sustained winds. And then the gusts are kind of just noise in terms of their actual play-to-play influence. So that's kind of part one. And Josh Allen's props are really, really depressed. It's 215. I've obviously been very vocal about my kind of distrust of the Bills offense. They finally unleashed Josh Allen last week, and I don't know, he just like accounted for 400 yards of total offense, and the Bills probably should have scored 35 points in that game, if not for some fluky turnovers and being tackled on the 1 yard line. Maybe that's part of the Bills' style of play, but nonetheless, this is a Steelers defense. Number one, missing TJ Watt, massive kind of on-off splits if you're into that sort of thing, but also just like losing by far their best player. And with a healthy Cam Hayward, this has been a team that has been a big-time pass funnel, far easier to pass against than run against. And where I think there's kind of a bunch of value here is not only in this fading of the weather, but also this is a Steelers team that is allowing a ton of explosive plays. So if we get kind of a Bills passing offense, which goes right back to Josh Allen here, and again, that's an if, but we're betting on tails here, so we're comfortable taking that risk. I see this as a very advantageous matchup against what should be a pretty weak pass rush. And the deep passing, I don't think is going to matter very much. Number one, like if there were a guy to actually be able to like throw through the weather or have, enough velocity on the ball that it doesn't really matter, that is Josh Allen. But again, it doesn't really matter. I don't think 15 mile per hour winds are going to be influencing deep passing that much. It is an area where the Steelers are extremely vulnerable. And where I think there's a lot of value is in if Gabe Davis is out here, where I think the Bills are going to rely more on Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir. I mean, we saw that last week. And where that's especially valuable is, and for every bit as I was skeptical of the Bills offense, the way we're going to be pricing props for these receivers is based on the last 7-8 weeks. That's a huge part of their sample where they weren't throwing very often. And that's kind of meaningless if they are going to be throwing as they were kind of in weeks 1 through 9. So effectively, we're getting a sample of the last 6-7 weeks of not only do we now have to account for the vacuum that Gabe Davis is taking up, but also we're going to have the short-term versus long-term performance. If it means anything, Joey Porter has been a terrific corner this year, has been shadowing Stephon Diggs. That only further elevates the case for Kincaid and Shakir. Shakir also grades out exceptionally well by most of our metrics, especially after the catch. I'm definitely going to want to be building some versions of SGPs of just Josh Allen and the Bills offense really having their way passing, and also kind of pairing him with Shakir and or Kincaid as well.
Yeah, I remember that Patriots-Bills game where it was, snowing and windy and horrible. And I want to say the total in that game it got down to like 29.5 or something like that. Josh Allen threw the ball just fine. Ironically, what happened is that his receivers couldn't catch. I'm almost more concerned about the wind throwing off the receivers from catching the ball than I am from Allen being able to throw it. I think it's a great point. And the TJ Watt thing, like, this is, I can already see this happening because people are very frustrated with Myles Garrett getting love at defensive end from PFF versus TJ Watt. So I can see it happening where the Steelers just get absolutely blown out. It gives them a little more fuel to the fire to say how valuable TJ Watt is to the Steelers. But if you think there is a bigger advantage, between quarterbacks given the weather, like, you can't find it. Mason Rudolph versus Josh Allen, like, that is a humongous advantage. The other thing is that in a game where perhaps it's a little windy, you've got some wind gusts, like Josh Allen being able to make things happen with his legs as a diversity, or as adding some diversity in the play calling, where obviously Mason Rudolph's not going to be able to do that, I do think shows up. Brad, sorry, I didn't mean to bag on your, future home here.
No. Hey, all good.
All right, where to next, Judah?
We'll go to Packers Cowboys. I think this is more a play, and definitely one I'd be very interested in betting live. And you can now bet some live SGPs as well. And that is, I'm not going to bet on a Packers receiver here. They are about as diverse a team in terms of their distribution of touches as any other. But I definitely will want to bet on kind of our go-to for this season of just quarterback alt passing. And a team is spread, especially for a large underdog. I think that we've talked about this a bunch for the Cowboys, which is this is a terrific pass rush, right? By far number one in quick pressure rate, and have kind of dominated that way and have forced a bunch of turnovers by virtue of quarterbacks needing to get rid of the ball quick, not having enough time for their receivers to generate a bunch of separation. But this is a Packers offensive line, which as a unit, even though the individuals that comprise that unit have not been great, the unit as a whole has been terrific in most pass blocking metrics this season. And if they can kind of get or mitigate the Cowboys pass rush enough, or even if Jordan Love can scramble as he's been accustomed to do it, this is of course not actually scrambling where they cross the line of scrimmage, but scrambling in the sense of evading the rush, buying time to make throws. The Packers wide receivers, I think, have a huge advantage over the Cowboys cornerbacks. Yes, Deron Bland has graded out terrifically in our kind of metrics, which capture a lot of the on-ball stuff, but off the ball, when he is just trying to prevent separation, he grades out as one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL. Basically, everyone on the Packers receiving unit, assuming everyone is healthy, even if they're not, I think you could just go up and down the list. They've got 5 guys who I think would all have the matchup advantage against the Cowboys corners. I think this is a spot where if the Packers offensive line can hold up against this Cowboys defensive line, you have a very vulnerable secondary, and that is not being priced as such. And I think the Packers are fully aware that this is the type of game script where you're not going to just get away with running the ball a bunch, trying to shorten the game. The Cowboys are too good on offense, especially relative to the talent that the Packers have on defense. You're going to need to just go toe-to-toe with the Cowboys. I think they let Jordan Love throw a bunch as they have over the second half of the season, which I do think is, by the way, being built into the pricing. This is a completely different offense the second half of the year versus the first half of the year. You just look at their pass rate over expected. It's a graph that just goes almost fully linear up. I think there's a lot of passing volume. I think this is actually a pretty sneaky good matchup. And if they're just going to shoot it out, and again, you can maybe wait to see, is this a 3-3 game in the first quarter? Are the Cowboys up 10-0, in which case I'm a little less interested in this. But all this is to say, I like Love and the Packers, something like a Love 300, Love 325, Packers -2.5, Packers -5.5. You can get some really juicy odds there. I think there's a real game script in which the Packers are just going toe-to-toe with the Cowboys. They actually have a sneaky good matchup here, and the prices are not reflecting that.
Gosh, it'd be really something, especially if it's a close game. The microscope on McCarthy's decision-making is going to be, it's going to be phenomenal. And you would trust LaFleur in that situation, I think, certainly over McCarthy. All right, where to next?
Yeah, go with the Rams and Lions here. I love the Rams in this spot. and we'll talk about this more in our locks of the week section. But a player I really love is Jameson Williams. I mean, we talked about this the last couple of weeks of the season. We were, a narrow missed tackle away from hitting a big SGP against the Cowboys. And the books have not seemingly adjusted to the fact that Jameson Williams is a full-time player at this rate. And he's going up against a Rams defense, which over the last bunch of weeks has allowed the second highest ADOT in the NFL. Jameson Williams is obviously that deep threat, and especially now that Khalif Raymond is out. If they're going to scheme up one of those deep 20, 25-yard bombs, which is something that the Rams are very vulnerable to. See Darius Slayton's 85-yard touchdown from a couple weeks ago as kind of a prime example of that. That ball is going to go to Jameson Williams. And kind of with sure, his median is low. He wasn't a full-time player, but that's exactly what I want to be fitting, which is number one, he is a full-time player. He's going to get not just that deep shot, but also some other new threats, some scheme targets in kind of that intermediate area of the field, and also maintain that same role of a guy who's going to, you're going to want to take the top of a defense with a 25, 30-yard deep shot, which is something that the Rams are especially vulnerable towards. I'm saying 95 yards at 13-1. I like that alone. I like that as part of a kind of game stack. You can build it multiple different ways. You can have it as the Rams winning this game, the Lions winning this game, but something around the core of a Jameson Williams to go for something like 95 to 100 yards.
Yeah, this is a fascinating game. No Laporta. No Khalif Raymond. I mean, Laporta gets a ton of targets, so you're gonna have to go somewhere. So I think makes a lot of sense there. Anything else before we get into locks?
No, I think you can take definitely a flyer. Just some quick hitters, I guess. You can take a flyer on this Bucs passing offense. I mean, they really let Baker Mayfield throw it a bunch last week. This is obviously a dreadful Eagles team. Mike Evans is going to get a bunch of deep targets. You can bet on him hitting some of those. And I don't know. I also, obviously, I love CJ Stroud. I've been a CJ Stroud truther from day one. The market is pricing in a premium on this Browns defense, which has not been the same unit home versus road if you're into that sort of thing. I also think there's room for plenty of play volume just by virtue of a Browns offense, which is extremely hit or miss. And they've been great with a lot of kind of deep passes, but if those don't hit and they're incompletions, I think we can see a very slow game where the Browns cannot, they can't run the ball, and there are a bunch of incomplete passes, which lead to further play volume from the Texans. And man, if they just let CJ Stroud throw, you don't want to coach your bets, but if they actually just let him drop back a bunch, I don't really care who the opponent is. I think he can succeed.
Had no idea that you were a CJ Stroud fan. By the way, you posited a question. Would you take Jalen Hurts or CJ Stroud? I want to say it was like week 5 or 6, maybe. Seems pretty prescient at this point. All right, we're going to get to locks here in just a second. Before we do, DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers bet $5 on any game, get $200 instantly in bonus bets. We just talked about a lot of bets. We're going to talk about some more here in just a second. And you can make your $5 go a decent ways with some of the parlay potential there that Judah just discussed. So invite you to go make that happen. Use promo code PFF when you sign up and get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any game. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. New customers bet just $5, $200 instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code PFF. The crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net in case you don't want to dial it on your phone and you'd rather visit a website. In New York, call 877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available, and you'll need it if you live there. For problem gambling, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. That is in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See DKNG.com/football for eligibility and deposit transactions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Holy God in heaven, I love those ad reads. All right, it is time for locks of the week. Brad, why don't you kick us off?
So I mentioned, I don't know if it was pre-show or beginning of the show, that I'd done a massive 180 and flip-flopped on a conversation we had on Sunday. Look, I'm a CJ Stroud stan, just like anybody else in this beautiful society. You look at this matchup though, and I do not like it for our boy. So first, CJ Stroud has our third passing grade against zone coverage. He is 26th in passing grade against man coverage. The Browns lead the NFL in man coverage played rate. He, as we talked about, it's been better, than from the Georgia game to his first season in the NFL. His performance against pressure vastly exceeds already what we thought that was the main, issue with his style of play. But, the Browns can get home with 4, don't need to blitz. Jim Schwartz is going to just throw every bizarre look he could possibly imagine in his face. And then look, Nico Collins against the Colts outside corners, playing literally by himself. Like that box score is laugh out loud funny. You let a guy go for like 190 on you. Nobody else had 10 yards. Like it was honestly hilarious. But the Browns are not going to allow that. And they have big physical corners in both Martin Emerson and Denzel Ward. Even if he kicks inside and gets some of Greg Newsome. And the last piece for me, we love him. He's our guy. PFF Bobby, good luck on your interviews. I'm sure you're going to be a head coach here in the near future. We're all going to be on your staff very shortly. So earmuffs. The run pass stuff is bananas, and it's going to kill them, I think. And you can't run against this Browns team either. And the sequencing just has not been stellar. So, yeah, it's under a field goal. I know it's in Houston, but I kind of do like the Brownies.
It's so interesting. I every want to like the Texans. The fact that it's the only thing that I think, to all your points, the Cleveland Browns defense has been totally different on the road than they were at home. But I do remember this Cleveland Browns team really making Kyle Shanahan's offense look not great. Now, I know they were a little banged up. They didn't have Trent. They didn't have Debo. So all those caveats are there. But I do think there's maybe not a ton of fire there, but there's a little smoke, a little bit of something. So I think your point's all super valid. It would stink. I want to see CJ Stroud. We can't have just journeyman quarterbacks here. We need some young blood going in. So it'd be great. But I do like it. So are you saying you like -2.5? What is your play there?
Yeah. So look, I agree. I'd much rather watch CJ Stroud play in the second round than Joe Flacco. Although if Flacco storms into Baltimore, that would be hilarious. I guess just play it as Browns -2.5. Maybe there's other angles to it, but I just viewed it as just betting the spread there. I guess the under too. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I'll go my first lock of the week. Rams money line. I think I saw it 145. Yes, we talked about kind of the 3.5 on the show earlier. I truly do not understand this price. If from any which way you want to look at it, if you're going to kind of take where the market's been pricing these teams the past couple of weeks to, which is the better offense, the Rams or the Lions right now, especially given the health of the Lions. I think it's the Rams. Especially, with all of their guys healthy, they've been performing at, if not the best offense in the league at top 3 level. Who's got the better defense? It's the Rams. Who matches up better in this spot? It's the Rams. Which team is kind of matchup agnostic? The Rams. If the Lions go down, this is not the same offense, right? Like they need the threat of the run in order to kind of perform at this high efficiency clip. We have Jared Goff in obvious passing situations is not particularly good. Matthew Stafford in obvious passing situations is very good. I think there are just basically every avenue of success or every avenue for the way this game can play out. The Rams are suited to at least be in this game, if not are better. Not to mention the fact that they effectively had a bye week last week and the Lions are limping into this playoff game. I really don't understand this price. I like the Rams a ton here.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty aligned here. Actually, Rams money line was going to be my first one as well. There are a couple of props that I like in this game, and so I'll throw them out now here as well. So Cooper Kupp got some rest. I think going to have a nice opportunity to come back a little fresh here. Like everyone's going to be all over, Puka Nacua. But a lot of opportunity for Cooper Kupp, I think, in this game. Pretty decent matchup. And let's see, what is 68.5 receiving yards for Cooper Kupp? I know Nacua is getting all the love, but I think that one's really interesting. So I'll throw that one out there. The one that I like most, though, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And the reason I like it is because I think that the Lions, to your point, are going to have to play from behind. No Laporta, no Khalif Raymond. He should get 20 targets in this game. I'm seeing 87.5 receiving yards. He's been absolutely dynamite. I think maybe he was a little banged up earlier in the year. He has been on fire recently. And this is a great matchup in a game I expect, to your point, Judah, them to not be able to control the script of this game and ultimately to have to be able to pass. Brad, where are you going next?
Yep. So, and I will just say really quick, I was going to jump on Cooper Kupp as my first prop, but I did remember, I assume Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going to be the slot corner for the Lions. So we've talked about all year long how bad they are in the slot. They're bottom 5 in every metric, but I assume that's where he starts. So I know you didn't just say Cooper Kupp was your pick, but it was going to be my first pick, and then I remembered that. So I like Jaden Reed against this Dallas Cowboys defense for the different reason. You got Jordan Lewis, who has been the weak link from a coverage standpoint in this Dallas Cowboys secondary. You know you're going to get Jordan Love under more pressure than normal. And if you look in recent games, that quick outlet has often been Jaden Reed over the middle. But also, Jaden Reed, they're putting him a little bit outside as well. He was great in the Chicago Bears game. He's been great for about a month, 2 months now, really. Yeah, I go yards. I'm less confident in the receptions. He has explosive ability. It's 49.5. Not a low number. It's not. But for him, the second half of the season, that has not been a particularly scary line there. Like the matchup, and I just think you're going to see, Stephon Gilmore probably put the clamps on Christian Watson. Deron Bland is obviously kind of a boomer bust type of player, but I just really, in particular, like the matchup over the middle. So I'm going to go Jaden Reed over 49.5 receiving yards.
I dig it.
I like it. I'll go for the next one with Jaylen Warren over 3.5 receptions at plus 110. This is a Bills defense, which is allowing a bunch of targets to running backs. I believe it's the 5th most targets to the position. You want to talk about the weather, if that's at all meaningful in the downfield passing, which I don't think it will be. But that would mean kind of a bunch of underneath touches for Jaylen Warren. And I think this game script really just calls for Warren to get a bunch of snaps over Harris. The last bunch of weeks, the Steelers have played in mostly neutral, if not positive game scripts. I don't think that is going to be the case against the Bills, which would lead to, number one, more snaps for Jaylen Warren. Number two, a higher run pass split in which Jaylen Warren is going to be getting a bunch of checkdowns. Not to mention the fact, Brad, I don't know if we talked about Rasul Douglas. I don't know his story here, but this has been a Bill secondary which has been kind of locked down and lights out over the past couple of months. I don't think we're going to see the same kind of target distribution to their wide receivers in Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. It's going to open up more stuff underneath in a matchup that calls for a bunch of kind of checkdowns and passes to running backs. I think Warren at +3, over 3.5 plus 110 is great value.
All right. My second one, we talked about this game a little bit as well, but I do not think Green Bay should be more than a 7-point dog. All of the reasons that you mentioned, Judah, I think I originally made this, Brad, when we guessed at 6.5. I am sticking there. I think it should be. That's where it should be. And I will take the Green Bay Packers getting 7.5 points. I like this. I like this a lot. I think that obviously Jordan Love has been playing really well. The grading is showing that. Earlier in the year, the stats didn't quite match the way that he was throwing the ball on tape. And I tweeted this out. I think they have the best receiving core. Son's the number 1 wide receiver that I've seen in a very long time. Like they do a really good job. I think they have the receiving core that the Chiefs wish they had. Like a bunch of guys that you've never really heard of. They all get open and they all make plays. Chiefs just have a bunch of guys you've never heard of who all suck. So, it's an interesting kind of dichotomy there. But I think that they will have some success against the Cowboys in this game. Now, the Cowboys should be able to score at will as well. So obviously a total of 50.5. I think that makes sense. But I will take the Packers, keeping it within a touchdown in Dallas.
I like that one for sure. I'm going to go with I think a massive buy low spot. I'm guessing George isn't going to like it, being mostly facetious. But The Kansas City Chiefs sat a bunch of players in Week 18, most notably Travis Kelce. The Miami Dolphins are 31st in EPA per dropback allowed to tight ends. They are 31st in success rate on targets to tight ends. They are bad in pretty much every coverage metric against tight ends. They also lose Jerome Baker at off-ball linebacker, who is kind of their linebacker stopping coverage backer. And Travis Kelce's props are really, really low for Travis Kelce. The yards is 57.5. I think I lean more towards yards. And the receptions is 5.5. I think the only reason why I'd maybe consider receptions with the bad weather, if we do think, I don't know, a lot of quick out passing and maybe he just gets a million kind of outlets, but I'll lean yards. I know this doesn't matter. It's a different season. It's a new year. Here's the last 3 years in the playoffs for Travis Kelce. 2020, he had 3 games, 8 for 109, 13 for 118, and 10 for 133. In 2021, he had 5 for 108, 8 for 96, and 10 for 95. And last year, he had 14 for 98 against the privileged Jaguars, 7 for 79, and 6 for 81. I mean, like, he's doubling these props in almost every game. I know he's not the same guy. He did look different this year. But look, the Grammys were behind us. Taylor did the red carpet. Like, he's fresh of mind. But I'll just say, I think the week off was huge. I'll go yards, 57.5, or scratch that. Let's get alty. Like, Judah, what is Travis Kelce 80 plus receiving yards? What do you think?
Let's pull it up.
I'll go on BetStamp if you want to jump on your next
80,
one.
I got plus 220 is what I'm saying.
Couldn't love it more.
You know, I actually really like this spot for the Chiefs. Next week is the time to fade the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Not this week. Not this week. This is the week people think it gets back up together. And then next week is the week to fade the fact that they have nothing from an offensive perspective. Yes, 100%. I love that, Brad. I think that especially given the Grammy backlash. I don't watch those kinds of shows, but I usually do enjoy seeing the opening monologue, you know, like the funny things that people say. That had to be the worst monologue ever. It was not funny at all.
Intro from Joe Coy?
Yeah. First off, I don't know who Joe Coy is. Maybe that means
I've never found him funny, and I haven't watched it, but I heard it was not well received.
What is he in?
He's the comedian, like a stand-up. I don't think he's in stuff.
He's a stand-up. Okay.
You're like that. You're like, I wish he was an actor instead.
Yeah. I mean, that's rough. Like, at least you could have been like, yeah, he's an actor. He was trying this out for the first time. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No, he's stand-up. That's his full-time job that he did.
If that's the best joke that you can come up with for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, like, there's a problem.
You know what's crazy too? He sells out like arenas. Like, Joe Coy is I would, if you Google right now, I'd make a bet with you. I would bet in 2023, like, total revenue or earnings, whatever, among all stand-up comedians, I bet he ranks in the top 10.
So let's find out. Stand up.
Judah, what's the over/under? 7.5, 8.5?
Oh, I don't even have the first clue.
I don't see anything that immediately pops up. If someone is watching this in the chat, and you can, I see like,
find that.
Yeah, like net worth is one that shows up. Obviously, Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah,
it pops there, but I legitimately had never heard of Joe Coy, and you couldn't pay me to go to one of his shows now after hearing that. Anyways,
here we go. Hold on, here we go. Top 10 grossing comedy tours of 2023. He came in 10th.
There you go. Who was number 1?
Let's see. Let's scroll down. It's just real quick. Him, Sandler, Sebastian Maniscalco. Also, because it's a gambling show, Bookie on HBO, pretty hilarious. Yeah. And I'm not even a huge Maniscalco guy, but the show's funny. Kevin Hart, unsurprisingly, is first.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'd rather see Cat Williams, but that's just me. All right. Let's keep this train rolling. Judah, are you up next?
Yeah. We'll go with Dalton Schultz under 38.5 receiving yards. This is a Browns defense which has been absolutely dominant against tight ends this year. I heard myself going absolutely dominant and thought to Brad last. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They've allowed 33 yards to the position. I think what's built into this price is like, oh, who's going to catch passes for the Texans? And it's like, oh, Dalton Schultz is the next man up. His snap share has been cut into a bunch by Brevin Jordan since Dalton Schultz came back from injury. Brevin Jordan played 50% of the snaps. Dalton Schultz does not retain the same role as he had pre-bye. It's obviously a great matchup here. And I think kind of what we talked about, this is on the margins of the play, but I think interesting to note the fact that we were talking about like Noah Brown as a like meaningful injury for the Texans goes to show exactly the state of the Texans offense. And like CJ Stroud is going to elevate his receivers. And like, yes, he went to Nico Collins a lot last week. And like Mechie and Hutchinson haven't been great, but like Noah Brown isn't any better. This is a journeyman wide receiver. I don't think that it's just like, he only has these two guys. The matchup does not call for a game two Dalton Schultz. Doesn't have the same role. Stroud is going to look elsewhere, to Collins, to the receivers, to his running backs. I'm going to take Dalton Schultz under 38.
Yeah, I like that. Right, my next one here. It is an under as well. Under George Pickens, 40.5 receiving yards in Pittsburgh and Buffalo. So here's kind of the view here. This is basically saying, look, Mason Rudolph with 15-mile-an-hour winds, gusts of 20, is going to be pretty worthless, and fading him pretty dramatically, especially if the wind picks up a little bit. 40.5. Look, obviously he needs just one long catch to make that happen. But he has a really bad matchup here. The Bills have been really exquisite covering lately, especially with Rasul Douglas there. They're number one in our PFF coverage rankings. All three of the guys that we have George Pickens matching up against have a top 12 PFF coverage grade. And I little just inkling that George Pickens is not the type of guy that's going to overcome any sort of adversity in these sorts of situations in a playoff game where maybe his quarterback doesn't have it together. Just saying. So yeah, George Pickens under 40.5 receiving yards.
I feel like the way he wins too, maybe this is anecdotal, but the win stuff is going to impact him, I think, more than a Deontay Johnson, who might just get fed.
Yes. So that's actually, you brought up the point that I was trying to remember, Brad, which is he is like a bigger play guy. So, if you're throwing these lob shots up, down the football field, I don't know that they're going to have a ton of success. So yeah, that's why I would steer him. And both he and Deontay have bad matchups, but I would take Pickens under as opposed to Deontay.
I like it. I thought about it when I saw the weather in that one. I'm tapped out, fellas. That's all I got.
Jude, any more from you?
Nope.
All right. We have Cleveland -2.5, the Los Angeles Ramley money line. We have a couple of props in that game as well. Cup over 68.5. Amon-Ra St. Brown over 87.5. Jaden Reed over 49.5. Green Bay +7.5. Jalen Warren over 3.5 receptions +110. Our man Travis Kelce 80+ yards at +220. Dalton Schultz under 38.5 for the Texans. And Jorge Pickens under 40.5 receiving yards. Fellas, it's been hot lately. What do we like?
Rams money line is my favorite game bet.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I do like a ride playoff Kelce.
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. I think we got to ride playoff Kelce.
Warren, I love Jalen Warren at plus money. He's had 5 straight games of 4+, and we're getting plus money on 3.5.
I like that. I also do like Amon-Ra in this spot. I just don't know who else they actually trust to throw the ball to in this game. Josh Reynolds' revenge game though. So maybe it's Josh Reynolds with 20 targets in this game. I'll go ahead and say they give the ball to Amon-Ra. So any others that we want to throw in there? We have Rams money line. We have Amon-Ra over 87.5. Jalen Warren over 3.5 receptions +110. And Travis Kelce Swift over 80 receiving yards at +220.
Strong 4-pack.
Strong 4-pack. You've got a lot of bets in front of you, so I don't think we need to add any more to the locks of the week. Obviously, we talked about a bunch here. Let it be known that this is the annual Judah Dominates at SGP weekend. So make sure you participate. To all those who celebrate, make sure you participate. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We love you all. We will see you on Sunday night. It's going to be great. We're going to guess some divisional lines. We'll see you then. Peace.